Welcome to Diaspora Connect on AAU TV. AAU TV is the voice of higher education in Africa. This program is dedicated to showcasing the impact of the African diaspora in Africa. And I am privileged to be interviewing a Ugandan who is now a diasporan in the United States of America, but has come to Ghana to the University of Professional Studies in Accra. You can follow this discussion on all our social media platforms and on our dedicated website, tv.aau.org. My name is Ransford Bekoe. I am the host of this program. Before we start the discussion, let's go for a short break. Welcome back from the break. This is Diaspora Connect on AAU TV. I'm privileged to be interviewing a professor from the United States of America who is here in Ghana currently and at the University of Professional Studies in Accra. And we are going to talk about benchmarking Africa's growth through trade and taxes. I'm privileged to welcome Professor Buagu to AAU TV. Prof, welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. So before we start the discussion, can you tell us a little bit about who Professor Buagu Musazi is?
I'm a full-time faculty at Morgan State University in Baltimore, Maryland. I've been there for over 10 years, but I've been teaching accounting, mostly taxes, for almost 18 years. I'm both an economist and an accountant, so I do both practice and research on taxes, so I'm a tax scholar as well.
Okay.
I'm originally from Uganda.
Okay.
Graduate of Makerere University.
Oh, the great Makerere University.
Yes, 1987.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So what took you to the U.S.? Is it academic or some other program?
I was a teaching assistant immediately after I finished Makerere.
Okay.
So we didn't have a graduate school in economics, so I got a scholarship to go to America.
Okay.
Yes.
So you did your master's in the United States?
Yes, University of Michigan.
University of Michigan. Mm-hmm. Okay, but you are now at Morgan University.
Yes.
Okay. Right. So let's delve straight into the discussion for the day. Yesterday, you gave a very brilliant delivery on taxation, and kudos to that. But we are just following up on that delivery. So what do you think are the tax incentives that can bring American businesses to Africa?
There are three major groups of tax incentives.
Okay.
The tax credits.
Tax credit?
Yes. A tax credit, they give you back some of your taxes. Then you got tax treaties between the United States and sub-Saharan African countries. And then you can also have some special deductions. Special deductions are kind of like magnified deductions. They can let you deduct from your tax returns.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you spend like $20 on labor, they can make that 60.
Okay, so now let's delve a little deeper into each of these components. What is the tax credit about?
A tax credit is an incentive given to a taxpayer in business or other activity. Basically, they are saying, the tax law is saying that if you do A, B, C, D, your tax is going to be reduced by so much. But if you are not in that activity, you're going to pay so much tax. Tax.
Okay, so it's America creating an atmosphere or an environment for Africa whereby taxes are used to invest in the African economy.
That's what we are proposing.
That is what you, as in the African Americans, or what?
No, as a scholar.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've also just seen someone from the Brookings Institute made the same proposal during the AGOA renewal hearings in 2014. So I'm doing more research on that, but some people are pointing the same thing, that if you want the American businesses to invest in Africa, you better give them some tax incentives.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
U.S. tax incentives.
U.S. tax incentives.
Not African incentives.
Okay.
Not African government incentives.
Yes.
I think there's some confusion there.
Okay. Yes. But in Africa, you know, we have the African Union. But then individual countries try to broker some treaties with the U.S.
Yes.
And, you know, we Africans try to give incentives to attract American businesses. Are you aware whether this has worked?
First of all, I make it clear that there aren't many, if any, treaties between African countries and the U.S. When I do some look around, I found maybe Egypt and South Africa have some treaties, tax treaties with the U.S. But even those, they're not as generous as they give to European countries or other Asian countries. So Africa have to do more to convince the United States to get more tax treaties. But in terms of us or Africa giving tax incentives to attract American businesses, I don't think that's working so much, because anecdotally, you don't see many these American businesses here. We have a problem of not designing our tax treaties very well.
That is, we as in Africans,
Africa, yes,
okay.
The tax
Right.
negotiating people. Normally, sometimes we give tax credits or incentives to businesses really don't need them.
Oh, really?
Yes. So we have to design them in a very, very strategic way.
Is it because we don't have the negotiation power? Or we don't have a unified voice to broker these treaties?
No, I think it could be lack of research.
Lack of research on the part of the African?
Yes. And the negotiating team. I don't know the expertise of the people negotiating this. It can be technical. We need to do a lot of research. That's why I think the African universities should start investing in taxation, PhDs.
Oh, okay.
Do you know any tax scholar in Africa?
Well, you are in the field.
Yes. You have to know accounting and economics.
Yes, we actually, one of the presidents of Ghana was a professor of taxation. That's the late Professor Jonathan Evans Atamels. Okay. Yeah, he was a professor of taxes.
He could have been a legal
Yes,
professor.
the legal
Tax
professor,
law
yes.
That's different from the accounting part of it.
Okay.
For instance, one of the mistakes we make is to give tax incentives for companies that would have come here anyway.
Oh, really?
Yes. If they're coming looking for minerals,
we don't need to give them tax incentives.
That's right.
But that is what we do.
Yes.
You know, significantly, you would agree with me that the American companies in Africa are not into the small and medium-scale enterprises.
That's right.
Now, why is that so?
Because there are two or more reasons. The big companies have unlimited resources. They can be anywhere. and they are in big projects, minerals mostly.
Okay.
So they don't need incentives. They have access to capital everywhere. But the small, medium-sized companies, those are the ones we need most, are not well funded.
Okay.
That's why they need incentives. They don't have, as I said, they are not well funded. And they need some connections.
Okay.
Both on the continent here and maybe in the US.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Sir.
And incidentally, what we call a small, medium-sized company in America may be a big company.
A big company in Africa.
Yes.
Okay, I get it.
Yes.
Okay. Now, in Africa, I think one of the challenges that is always being told us is that we don't have strong tax regimes. And that, for instance, if you take income tax, it's just a small bracket of, people who are taxed. So where is the problem? Is it the capacity or it is the lack of commitment?
Political commitment, you mean?
Yes.
It's a combination of things. Have you ever heard of the hard tax?
The hard tax?
Yeah.
No.
Back in the colonial days?
No.
HUT, hut.
HUT.
Yeah,
Oh, so each hut is taxed.
Yes, household taxes.
Household taxes.
Yeah, the colonials imposed those taxes in Uganda and Kenya. I don't know whether they did that in Kenya.
Okay.
For about 5 reasons. Africans didn't want to be in the monetized economy. So in order to monetize the economy, you had to find a way of forcing Africans to look for money. I mean, they were living on their land, so they didn't need money.
Yeah.
And also, the colonial governments needed some tax revenues.
Okay.
But those Africans didn't have jobs. I remember our president, Museveni, was saying, he removed we used to have what's called a graduated income tax, where the local chiefs could go assess income taxes on locals.
Okay.
And I think that was a carryover from the British. But they removed it. So there's no income tax. But if there's a political will, we can impose some tax on people.
Yes. But then
regardless of where they're going to get money. And I'm going to give you reasons why.
Okay, yes.
There are some non-tax benefits we get if people start paying taxes from their income. One of them is you're gonna see more engagement in the national activities because they're contributing to the funding of the government. Okay, it could be one of the reasons. I'm emphasizing one of the reasons why we have corruption, rampant corruption, is because the public monitoring is not high. People don't pay taxes to the government, so they don't monitor. Compared to countries like Sweden and other high tax-paying countries, where taxpayers are keeping an eye on where their money is going.
So is it a problem with the monetization or the digitalization of the African system?
Digitalization just came recently, but we can take advantage of it.
Okay. One
of my concepts I may have is, let's have local tax filing centers.
Right.
We can do it electronically. You have districts here?
Yes, we do.
In Ghana? Yeah, we can have counties have tax filings where people can file taxes electronically.
Well, generally incomes are quite low.
They're going to get it.
And that's why people avoid taxation.
No, they're going to pay.
From the very little resources.
Yes. It's about the amount of tax they're going to pay. They have to contribute something.
Okay.
I mean, they have money to pay in churches.
They do have money to pay, yes. The offertories.
Yes.
Yes.
And other places.
Yes.
I think we should go back and study the hard tax.
But don't you think...
I do some farming and other activities in Uganda. Sometimes I give people work and they refuse it. I don't know whether they have that exercise here in Ghana. People turn down work.
Don't you think that rather indirect taxes are the way to go? Because if people have to pay...
What I'm talking about is not a substitute.
It's not a substitute.
It's an addition to create some sort of fiscal responsibility on the masses.
Okay. Okay.
It's gonna, people are gonna start paying attention to the civic activities, government activities.
You are connected to Diaspora Connect on AAU TV. We are talking about taxation, and also we'll be talking about trade as benchmarks for Africa's growth. And I am having an interview with Professor Musazi, who is originally from Uganda, but now domiciled in the United States of America. We're going on a short break.
This is Africa's most friendly nation, Ghana. A warm reception awaits you in an environment where you can discover and harness your full potential. Your home is an academic haven lying northeast of the city center, a quick dash from the airport. A spirited community where young, vibrant minds are empowered to express themselves, break academic boundaries, and thrive in an atmosphere of rich cultural heritage and excellence in various collegiate and extracurricular activities. This institution represents a whole new world of fun and offers you a variety of activities, facilities, and services geared towards your total development. Believing in the uniqueness of all our students, we encourage them to pursue excellence in integrity. Welcome to the University of Ghana, your preferred academic destination.
Welcome back to AAU TV. The program is Diaspora Connect, and I'm the host, Ransford Bekoe, and I'm privileged to be talking to Professor Musazi, who is from Morgan University in the United States of America, and we are talking about taxation and trade as benchmarks for Africa's growth. Prof, just before the break, we were talking about taxation, and now let's just focus the attention on trade. It looks like Africa has signed the African Growth and Opportunity Act, which actually was signed in 2000, and so we have 6 more years to go. But then the impact of AGUA is not being felt. I don't know whether it is the view of the Africans in the diaspora, whether trade should be the way for Africa to grow. I mean, trade with the United States.
Trade with the United States.
Yes.
It's just part of it. We have to trade with everybody in the world. But we have to emphasize domestic trade first. That's how we're going to build a capacity to export to other countries. But trade with the United States is important because everybody wants to sell the United States. I mean, even from Europe, Japan, China, you've got to have a leg in the United States. Okay. That's the best market in the world. Yes. But it's not the only market.
It's not the only market. Yes. So now China is coming strongly into the picture. Yeah. But then what has been the problem or the challenge with the AGUA? Because from your presentation that I saw, AGUA had grown phenomenally from 2000 to 2008, and then it started dipping. So what has been the challenge there?
I can't pinpoint. I have to look at the data more. I mean, I can see that African exports going down after 2008. I know at that point the U.S. recession, financial crisis started, but I don't think that impacted AGOA, but it could have been. There's so much correlation in the timing there. U.S. recession started in 2007, 2008, throughout 2012. That's when African exports to U.S. declined as well, but they didn't recover. Yeah, okay. Actually, they are back to their pre-AGOA years. Yes.
Yeah.
But let me qualify this. We shouldn't ignore the non-export benefits we have gotten from AGOA. For instance, they spent $5 billion. The U.S. spent $5 billion from 2000 to 2015 on trade capacity building, removing barriers to trade. Because by the time they passed AGOA, Africa was not ready to export, except countries that were already exporting, like South Africa and oil exporting countries. But other countries did not have the capacity. So the U.S. government put in $5 billion over 15 years, just building export capacity. And that has spillovers, because when you build export capacity, you are building export capacity for everywhere in the world, not only in the US.
Yes.
So there could be other Goa-related exports that were not going to the US.
But maybe have gone to China or Europe or some other place.
Yes. Another advantage was they put conditions on these countries to qualify for AGOA.
Yeah.
And these are signals. If a country qualifies for AGOA, other investors or other countries take notes of that country as well. In other words, AGOA has done the homework for them to screen that country.
Okay.
So they are saying, it's hard to isolate these things, but they're saying some countries started getting more investments from elsewhere. But we don't know whether that was because of AGOA or not. So it would be wrong to say that just because exports going down, that was original intent, then AGOA benefits are not there.
Okay.
More research is done.
More research is done. Yeah, but with all this capacity built by the US, $5 billion US, why is Africa not trading within its member communities or member states? But then Africa still wants to trade outside, and there are restrictions, there are, controls on quality, etc. But then intra-African trade is not at the speed that we would have wished. Is there anything that you can say to that?
I think that should be for us Africans. I don't know how much AGOA can do for that, because some of the infrastructure was built to, for instance, increase access to ports, like some roads in Mozambique, in Ethiopia, and some things in Ghana here, removing some regulations, property rights. But in terms of Africa trade, I don't think AGOA was so much into that. But regardless of AGOA, we need some network of roads. Yes. Another thing, we need diversity of products. Because we almost produce the same products, right? So, for instance, what does Ghana export to Ivory Coast? You all produce cocoa.
You all do.
Yes. So that's when manufacturing comes in, so that different countries can manufacture different things. And we can easily do that if the American companies come here.
Yes, so the issue has been, how do we attract American companies to come to Africa?
Tax incentives.
The tax incentives.
I do taxes in the US. I can see what companies go through to minimize or avoid paying taxes. They do a lot. They do a lot of
avoid paying taxes.
Yes. So if there's an incentive for them, they're going to look at it.
But then, whose responsibility is it? Since you have said that there are only a few countries that enter into treaties with America, so whose responsibility is it to create those incentives to get America to invest fully in Africa?
Congress, US Congress, and African interest groups, including governments, have to peddle this through Congress.
Okay. And how strong is the diaspora networks to, to advocate, to be like a pressure group to influence the U.S. Congress to look at these tax incentives?
By diaspora, I mean Africans in the U.S.?
Africans in the U.S.
Not very strong. Not very strong.
As a pressure group?
As a pressure group. But the strong ones are going to be EU, African Union, African embassies. There are other councils in the U.S., like a Trade Council for Africa, the African American groups, both in Congress and private ones, are very good pressure groups. Yes. We in the academia, we can do some pressure groups, but an average diasporan can't do much.
Yes, but then, so how can we get this, moving? Because it looks like we can't work in silos anymore. How can we as Africans to get the U.S. to come to Africa through the tax incentives, since we know that taxation is the way for them to get to Africa? So how can we go on to get them here?
We're gonna start talking to Congress.
Okay.
Yes, especially these proposals. I'm glad I'm seeing them also being floated somewhere. So we just have to put on the pressure.
Okay.
Yes.
Put in a pressure.
Yes.
So I think that the diasporans will have to get a united voice, and probably you need to have representation at the African Union.
Yes.
To push the African agenda, because we have an agenda which is called Agenda 2063, which is the Africa we want. And we call on the diasporans as a resource out there to help promote this agenda.
Yes.
And I believe with you and your colleagues, you are going to push Africa to reach a higher level.
Yes, I've just seen as I said, a hearing by someone during the AGOA hearings in 2015. They were talking about tax incentives. I missed that part of the media. But you are saying some of these incentives could even cost less than $70 billion or $70 million.
My final question is, do you think that AGOA will be renewed after 2025?
It will be renewed, but not as is, not as it's now. I think actually one of the things I'm calling for is that in the countries where it's working, it should be maintained and reinforced. But in countries where it's not doing well, something new, probably completely new, should be made.
Yes, so this call is to the African Union to talk to its member states.
Correct.
Yes. So on this very note, we have to come to the end of our interview on how we can benchmark to grow Africa using trade and taxation. It's been very nice talking to Professor Musazi, who is a diasporan in the United States of America, but originally a Ugandan who has come to Ghana to lecture at the University of Professional Studies in Accra. Continue to stay into other programs on AAU TV. I've been the host. My name is Ransford Bekoe. Take care and bye.